Released in 1989, Bleach is the first studio album by Nirvana. This was the band at their most raw and hungry, on a budget, but on a mission to create a record that would show themselves as not just another Northwestern punk band happy to tread the toilet circuit of tiny venues, but as a band who are destined to be able to quit their day jobs as janitors and painters and decorators. It was Kurt that got the ball rolling initially by getting in contact with Jack Endino at Reciprocal Recording Studios in Seattle. According to friends of Kurt at the time, he was really into Soundgarden's Screamin' Life EP, which Endino had recorded there. Kurt spoke to Endino on the phone, mentioning they were friends with the Melvins and that their drummer Dale Crover would be joining them for the session. This enthused Endino, who was a big fan of the Melvins and knew Dale to be a great drummer, so assumed that this new band, who were actually between names at this point, must have something about them. In this initial session in January 1988, they recorded 10 songs in 6 hours, with the band first recording without vocals, with Kurt adding them later, according to Endino, in just one take. The band then hastily left for a gig with a quick mix of the songs, with Endino promising to devote more time to mixing them properly after they left. He was so taken by the band, and especially Kurt's voice, that he approached KCMU Radio and Jonathan Poman at Sub Pop Records. Meanwhile, Kurt had sent the demo to a number of labels, but with no response. Luckily, Sub Pop agreed with Endino that the band had something and made plans to release a single. Incidentally, 5 of the songs from these initial sessions were released on Incesticide and were in fact the initial quick mixes, rather than the more polished mixes prepared later. Floyd the Barber, Paper Cuts and Downer would eventually make it onto Bleach, but more on that later. It was Sub Pop who chose Love Buzz to be their first single, a cover of the Shocking Blue song that the band had reworked into their own style. Kurt wasn't initially happy with this decision and felt an original song would have been better. He acquiesced in the end though, as they returned to Reciprocal Sound in June '88 for the first of 4 days spent recording the single plus B-side, with the last session actually being in September, with Kurt having to redo vocals for Love Buzz at the request of Sub Pop. For these sessions, they now had their name, plus a new permanent drummer in Chad Channing. Love Buzz was released in November and managed to make enough noise to attract some worldwide attention, with British Weekly Sounds making it their single of the week. The magazine would later gift him an iconic sweatshirt. The relative success of Love Buzz earned the band a shot at recording an EP, although the band themselves were adamant they wanted to record a full album. Taking an executive decision, they proceeded to book their own studio time, which was actually paid for by their later brief 4th member, Jason Everman. Everman, who actually features on the cover and is credited in the album's notes, doesn't actually play a single note on the album, but they felt obliged to include him as a way of saying thank you for fronting the $606 it cost to record. These sessions began on Christmas Eve and took 6 days, with the last being in late January '89. The initial session proved to be a bit problematic, as when they attempted to downtune to the key of D from the standard E, they ended up downtuning to C, as they didn't realise they were already in D in the first place. Several songs were recorded in this unconventional tuning, before the band decided the experiment didn't suit them, leaving Blue as the only one that worked. The studio ran an Atari MX5050 half-inch 8-track tape machine, recording at 15 inches per second without noise reduction. The drums were mic'd with a pair of AKG 414s as XY stereo overheads, a Shure SM57 on the snare, a Sennheiser MD421 on toms, and an AKG D112 was used for the kick drum. Kurt's vocals and guitar amps were mic'd with a Shure SM58 with a foam windscreen for vocals. The bass was recorded using a Sennheiser MD421 placed close to the amp. The desk at Reciprocal Sound was the Ramsar WRT-820B. I'm unsure if he had any extra outboard preamps, or whether the preamps of the Ramsar were the only ones used. Endino used few effects and minimal reverb. Chris Novoselic may have used different guitars and amps for each session, but his main bass appears to be the Ibanez Black Eagle through a Fender Twin reverb amp. Kurt also used the Fender Twin that Endino had modified to more closely resemble the Bassman electrically by matching the characteristics of the phase inverter. According to Endino, The 68 Fender Twin was fed into Kurt's cabinet, which was a 2x12 containing 75-watt Celestians with a sealed back. Based on photo evidence, this would appear to be a BFI Bullfrog model cabinet, which were quite popular in the 1980s. Chris also used an MXR M104 Distortion Plus for his overdriven sound at the time. Kurt's guitar for the session was his Univox Highflyer with stock humbuckers. Specifically, it was a Univox Highflyer Phase 3, which were made between 1974 until 1977. Kurt's known to have had a few Highflyers, and all were Phase 3 models, probably down to the fact that this was the peak year of production for them, and therefore the most common. His main amp at the time was a Randall Commander 2, and this was the amp he used for the first demo session. For the Love Bus sessions, his Randall was in the repair shop, so he ended up using the Fender Twin, and stuck with that for all subsequent sessions. He also used a wah pedal plus a Boss DS1 for distortion. On that first demo session, they had recorded Floyd the Barber, Paper Cuts and Downer with Dale, but they wanted to re-record them with their now official new drummer, Chad Channing. Despite their best efforts though, they felt they never quite captured the same power and energy as those initial recordings, mainly down to Crover's influence. Even Chad agreed that this was the case, which couldn't have been easy on his ego. The vocals were always the last element to be recorded. Likewise, the lyrics were always the last piece of the song puzzle to be put into place. Described by Kurt as being written in haste rather than careful contemplation, it's clear he was still finding his way to become the great lyricist he became. In an interview with Sounds, Kurt said at the time, "When I write a song, the lyrics are the least important thing. I can go through 2 or 3 different subjects in a song, and the title can mean absolutely nothing at all. Sometimes I try to make things harder for myself, just to try and make myself a bit more angry. I try out a few subconscious things, I suppose, like conflicts with other people. Most of the lyrics on the Bleach album are about my life in Aberdeen." The album's working title was actually Too Many Humans. It was renamed Bleach after Kurt found an AIDS prevention poster while driving through San Francisco. The poster advised heroin addicts to bleach their needles before use, featuring the slogan, "Bleach your works." The album was released in June 1989, selling steadily despite Sub Pop's lack of promotion, which ultimately led to the band's breakaway from them for their next album, a little record named Nevermind. You might have heard of it. They toured extensively before the album's release, notably in Europe in February, kicking off in the UK with Tad co-headlining. This tour proved to be successful, which certainly helped sales of their debut, giving them a platform on which to launch their future conquests. Reviews at the time of release were very positive. UK magazine NME gave Bleach an 8 out of 10 rating and wrote, "This is the biggest, baddest sound that Sub Pop have so far managed to unearth. So primitive that they managed to make label mates Mudhoney sound like Genesis." Following the massive success of Nevermind, Bleach was inevitably re-released. Prior to Nevermind, it sold 40,000 copies, but has now sold close to 2 million worldwide, easily making it Sub Pop's best-selling album of all time. While Nevermind and In Utero are undoubtedly their most popular albums, Bleach is an important record, as it really shows the band at their most raw, perhaps capturing the essence of what they always wanted to be. If you'd like to see more videos about the recording process involved in creating these classic albums, then you can support this channel by using my affiliate links in the description. This is a great way to do it, as you don't have to pay a thing, and I get a small percentage if you buy anything. Thank you in advance for your help.